That was Antonio and his company of Spanish dancers. Now I have here the plans of something that a great many of you will envy. The plans of a new house. I don't think there's any quarrel with the statement. The most exciting thing a family can do is to move into a new house, or better, to build one. And that's exactly what the TV radio workshop did 2 years ago. It helped to design and build a house, and just take a look at it going up and coming down. Here it is. Now, that house was called the Excursion House because it was first seen on the workshop's children's show, Excursion. And the idea then was to show children that houses just don't come with the cradle, that an awful lot of savings and care and anxiety and people and skills go into making this house, the Excursion House. I'm looking at the price here, and you're going to hear about it in a minute. What do? We put ourselves in the position of maybe a lot of you who have big ideas and little bankrolls. And we went to a famous designer of small houses, Carl Koch, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we said, in effect, can you design and build a house that is roomy, durable, and decent for $14,000? $14,000 was the price he managed to hit. Now, in some parts of the country it would be more because of labor costs and freight and so on, but in other parts of the country it would be less. Now, he was there in Massachusetts, and we said, all right, build it right there. But we want a house that could go anywhere, a house that could withstand the winters of Minnesota and the summers of Indio, California. And especially we want a house that would suit families that hope to grow. Well, he took up the challenge, and we sent the Omnibus cameras up there to Massachusetts and Burgess Meredith along to describe what the cameras saw. And you know what the response was? The response from the audience that saw the finished house by way of the finished film that you're going to see, 19,000 letters from people who said to Mr. Koch and the builder, tell us more. This house has gone up in 29 states, and what started with us as a brainchild turned into an infant industry. Now, this being so, we thought it would be fun to go back, see how it started, show you the house going up brick, if it was brick, lathe by lathe, step by step, and then to come back and give you a progress report on what has happened in 2 years. Now, remember, we said to Mr. Koch, you've got to build a house that can go anywhere in the United States. But because, of course, he was up there in Massachusetts, the parent house was originally planned for 1 acre of land in western Massachusetts. And so it was in Weston, one day, that Mr. Koch went out with Ed Deal, his assistant, tramped around, got burrs in his socks, and retired to ponder the question: how to design a good house for our time.
This is Carl Koch's office in Cambridge. The house is 220 years old, but still sound and weather-tight. It was well thought out and carefully and honestly built. Planning a house is seldom a one-man job anymore. It's a complicated business, and as a business it proceeds best, though not always quickest, with a free exchange of ideas. Well, we've seen the land. We want to plan the kind of house it deserves. Strong and good to look at, and efficient. What about it? Something simple, a cottage effect. Well, let's get it off the ground, see the view. That's more like it. And spread it out some. Living room, sun deck, carport. Yes, and don't forget the landscaping. Look, fellas, we can only spend $14,000 for the whole house. Ooh, That takes care of that. Well, let's try again. What do we have to do to build any kind of a house? How can we do it cheapest? The most living space for the least money. For one thing, we can't afford a house that's all spread out like this. Too much foundation, too much roof. Foundations and roofs are expensive. It'll have to be more this shape. Less foundation, less roof, just as much space. Put a roof on it. Very pretty. Or better still, instead of a flat roof, let's make it a pitched roof. Doesn't use much more material, and somehow it looks a little better. And what's more important, by using a pitched roof, we get this much extra space. Well, how's it going to look then? Slab, 2 floors, attic.
Well, here it was, and there are millions like it. But our bright idea was unrealized. The chief criticism of this house was the chief criticism of most new houses that go up. Cost too much money for too little space. Look at this attic, for instance. Now, undoubtedly, this area will keep the place a little cooler in summer, but there's nothing much can live up there except buffalo moths and the forgotten works of Walter Scott and some old porch screens. And down here, every house has to have foundations. Well, maybe we could dig all this out from here and make a cellar, which is a good place to put steamer trunks and vegetables, but children can't grow up in a cellar. Now, somewhere in this little plan, 2 stories and a pitched roof, is the secret of a new house. The question is, how did we find it?
Well, let's dig down, all right, and put in a foundation. But instead of leaving it buried or using it for a cellar, let's make it the first floor. This puts our first floor half below ground level, except for this end of the house. We'll open it out this way. Put 1 door at this end, and 1 at the side. And from the side door, a stairway down to the first floor and up to the second floor. We still have a 2-story house. Our first floor is below ground level, but to keep it from feeling closed in, big windows all across this end. Run them all the way up from the ground to roof. And solid walls here. And here. Sometimes the first idea of a house comes quickly. But as it goes through the planning stages, every part of that idea gets thought over, tried in different ways, improved, and redrawn. Here's something to argue about here. The amount of headspace on the second floor. It's only 3 feet there at the sides. Well, you can bend down a little. Bend down 3 feet. Look at it. Here's your 3 feet. So it gets redrawn. 5 feet at the sides. Adds a couple of feet all around. More money, but worth it. More room to move around, better circulation of air. Draw it again and again. That was only one change. There'll be others. All along the way, you find new ideas, like this. The side walls of our house can be divided into 4-foot panels. Why don't we build them in panels, walls and windows, and switch the panels around however we want? If we build our outside walls in sections, why not do the same with our second floor? 30 separate panels, each 4 by 8 feet. And to support the panels, 2 long beams. Run them the length of the house. and support those beams with steel columns. And we can do the same thing with the roof. And with the weight of the house supported on beams and columns, we can divide up the inside space any way we want. This is just one possible plan. Almost every architect begins as a draftsman. It's the hardest, most tedious part of the business. Nothing can be left out or fixed up later. Plans have to be accurate, not just to inches, but to fractions of inches. A moment of daydreaming or a slip or a blot can ruin half a day's work. But it is worth the effort. The more carefully you build your house on paper, the more easily you can build it in fact. Carl Koch's job doesn't end when the plans are final. He'll be around most of the time, actually watching, making suggestions, checking on the work as it goes forward. And here it begins. Remember, to save money, we don't want to push the land around any more than we have to. And because there isn't any heavy or complicated digging, we don't need heavy or complicated or expensive equipment. One light tractor does everything. Topsoil in one pile, subsoil in another. This kind of cement work isn't too difficult, but it has to be done carefully, and it's physically hard work. That form he's toting there weighs around 70 pounds. These forms are all standard size. Nothing special has to be built to do this particular job. Part of the secret of this house, you remember, is in using equipment and materials that are easy to find and using them in the handiest ways. A double row of forms all around, smooth sides facing in and 8 inches apart. The cement itself gets mixed in a truck on its way here. And when the forms are ready, the cement is ready. He hasn't lost his watch in there. What he's doing helps the cement settle evenly into the corners. The truck pours at 3 or 4 places all around, and the cement gets spread out. Then, as you might expect, it just sits there for a while. After about 15 or 20 hours, it's hot enough to stand up by itself, and the forms get taken off. What's going on here is just part of the building process. The carpentry work moved indoors. Could be done in any good-sized carpentry shop. And doing it indoors, separately, means that it can be done any time. It doesn't depend on the weather. And there's less waste of material. The glue they're using is tremendously strong. It seals the beams to the plywood as if they were all one piece to start with. It's called a stress skin construction. One side on, stretch the insulation across, tack it, more glue, and put the other side on. Roof panels get nailed on one side, stapled on the other. Stapling guns and rubber mallets. You might try tying your Christmas packages this way. Then while the glue hardens, the panels are kept under pressure. Then when the foundation is ready for them, the panels are moved out to where we're building. From now, working steadily, it doesn't take long to get the entire shell of the house up and roofed over. 4 men can do it in 2 days, 8 men in 1 day. 16 men in a hurry, half a day. It's a lot simpler than the usual way of framing a house, but it isn't as simple as playing with blocks, and no one relaxes for a while yet. Here's one of the end sections, mostly window.
All right, Charlie, out of the middle.
Now, it's possible to assemble the house one panel at a time, but with enough help, it's faster to do it by 3s and 4s. 4 holes to fit over bolts in the foundation. Bring a section slowly up. Move it slowly into place. Slide it down over the bolts. Secure it. And nail props to it. Hold it in place until we get another section in at right angles. Here at the beginning, especially, measurements are important. The panels have all been made exactly, and they have to be put together exactly. Any small error now would increase as we go along. By now, the sides are up, and most of the second floor panels are in. They're hoisted up through the back and slide down into place along the big carrying beams, and then get nailed. The second floor is left partly open for electrical wiring later. What's the rope doing there? Just what you'd guess, holding the sides together. After the second floor is in and secure, of course, everybody moves up, and we get the roof beams ready. Like the beams underneath the second floor, the roof beams extend the length of the house and beyond. They're supported here at the ends of the house and by steel columns in between. Then, same procedure as before, bring the panels up, stack them, and starting at one end, move them up into place. You notice these roof panels are longer than the wall or floor panels. When they're in place, the roof extends 4 feet beyond the walls. That keeps the sun out in the summer, but lets it in during the winter when the sun is lower in the sky. Now, as you saw, all panels are made to measure. So in theory, they should all fit perfectly. But in practice, they sometimes need a little gentle persuasion. The point of getting the house framed and roofed over all at once is that the rest of the work inside can go on in all kinds of weather. And as soon as the shell of the house is complete, all the different trades move in and start to work. Roofers and carpenters and painters on the outside, and inside to begin with, the masons, even before the floor goes in. Weather-worn brick for our chimney. Plenty strong enough. It has a texture that new brick does not. Skillful work. In about 2 days, they'll be up through the roof. The plumbing goes in. Finished plumbing downstairs and rough plumbing up on the second floor. The stuff he's tamping in there is oakum, used in the old days to seal the joints in wooden ships. Works just as well here. Add 1 spoonful of melted lead. When the masonry and plumbing is finished, gravel starts going inside. This is all preliminary to pouring the cement slab, the subfloor of the house. Gravel serves as a bed for the cement and helps protect it against the moisture in the ground. Heavy asphalt paper over the gravel. And above that, the pipes for the warm air heating system. When the cement goes in, it'll cover them up. A lot of electricity comes into this house. Most of the utilities, stove, washer, hot water heater, will be electric. As much as possible, all the wiring, like the plumbing, is kept together. This is on the second floor. And when the wiring is complete, the open sections are covered over. And a finished flooring, of course, goes in later. And the glass goes in. Use suction cups. Fasten them to a 125-pound sheet, carry it around like a suitcase. But it's nothing to do in a high wind. Putting the glass in this house is pretty simple. A bed of putty in the frame, Set the glass in, firm it up, don't crowd it. Nail on strips of wood outside, wood beading to hold it. And scrape off the leftovers. Well, our house is up, sided, finished floors, walls and ceilings finished, electricity in. Last touch-up, painting going on the outside, fixtures in and cleaned. All the landscaping done. We are about ready. And sitting down below here is our architect, Carl Koch. Looks a little like a Yale football captain, except the trees behind him are real. Kitchen appliances are in, rest of the house empty. Furniture? Well, now, good, and some, very good. And now, I need a little help. All right, gentlemen, let's get started. To begin with, we'll work on the first floor, all the way at the far end. There are 3 bedrooms down here, all for the younger people in the family. Parents sleep upstairs. Now, 2 of those bedrooms can be a double room, the way you see them now. 2 desks, 2 beds, plenty of space. Or, in about 3 seconds, they become separate rooms. You can leave the sliding doors shut or open, depending how much room you want or how friendly you feel. Outside of the bedrooms, near the middle of the house, is a big all-purpose area. Use it for a game room, perhaps, or a downstairs living room. Here's the near end of the house again, near the fireplace you saw them building. Use it for a lounge if you want, conversation before meals. Most of the downstairs is open, you've noticed, but it divides naturally into areas like this. A good place for a winter evening. Next to the lounge is the dining area, looking back along the front of the house. All the furniture you see here costs about $250 total. And handy to the dining area, the kitchen. The kitchen usually stands open. This is an easygoing house. It can be screened off when and if we want. Yes. All right, let's move upstairs now and spread some more furniture around. The master bedroom. This takes a little practice. The rest of the second floor, you'll recall, is left only partly finished. Rough flooring, rough plumbing, rough walls to start with. But all that remains is simple work. So we might move a few tools right in here for a temporary workshop. The house is meant for easy living. It was planned that way. For all the different uses a house is put to. To grow as a family grows, to meet their needs, the need to save money to begin with, but beyond that, a need for comfort, for space, even a sense of luxury. And beyond that, the human need for symmetry and right proportion. So you've seen it from the beginning. The empty field, the first plan, the first breaking of ground to this. It's a strong house, a warm house, a good house for our time.
Well, that was 2 years ago. And within 6 months, that house had won 3 awards from Parents Magazine as the best home for families with children. And the American Institute of Architects described it as the best development house of the year. Well, since then, 80 builders have put it up or are in the process of doing so. It's gone a lot of places since it was first set up in a New England field. Here it is, for instance, on a lake shore in Michigan. Now for some closer looks at the house itself. Some people divide it up into rooms in the traditional way, and others leave it open. Here we are upstairs in the house. By the way, it's hard to realize how recently we've come to accept that as an interior, such an open interior. Now, this house is in Georgia, and it's the home of Dr. and Mrs. Stanley Doggett, and of the small Doggetts. Of course, you can't tell an architect too often that every family comes to a house with different habits, different ideas of, for instance, what is normal furniture. And this house tried to cope with this variety, and with the fact that the human animal comes in all shapes and sizes, and in adolescence he grows as you watch him. Now here it is in Philadelphia, sheathed in brick to blend in with an old established area. And here in Grand Island, Nebraska, and here in Chicago, Illinois. Well, it's always pleasant to be able to report on an experiment that succeeded, and especially one that we had a hand in ourselves. Now, in a couple of minutes, we shall pay a return visit to a famous tent show. However, before we visit again the theatrical hero known as Toby and the Tall Corn, we step aside for a subscriber.
This is the desert, where dust breeds only dust.